So I'd like to begin today by sharing two statements with you. The first is from Unity minister and author Jim Rosemergy, whose writings on the simple life will be referenced at times today. And the second is coming from psychiatrist, author, and pioneer in near-death studies, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And so Jim once wrote that there is much to learn about life, but it is best to learn how to live. And Dr. Kubler-Ross shared that learning lessons is a little like reaching maturity. You're not suddenly more happy, wealthy, or powerful, but you understand the world around you better, and you're at peace with yourself. Learning life's lessons is not about making life perfect, but about seeing life as it was meant to be. And so I offer these opening statements as we begin to explore a little bit about what we are calling the simple life today. And I realize that perhaps many of us are likely feeling that life today is not really all that simple. That going through our day and whatever each day brings, feeling content and at peace is not always an easy thing to do. But it is possible. It is possible. And not only in the times when life is going great and everything does feel easy, it's also possible when everything looks like or actually is and feels like utter chaos, where it's nowhere near feeling peaceful or easy or enjoyable. And when Jim Rosemergy wrote that that there's a lot to learn in life, but a better tack to take would be to learn how to live, he was inviting us to choose a certain perspective in life, one that we might also have to learn and relearn, as we go on into, as our lives continue. He noted that when we are young, when we're children, life looks wonderful. I mean, life looks full of possibility and potential and promise. And just remember the times where you may have asked a young child what he or she wanted to be when they grow up, right? So very often, their answers in return were unlimited in terms of what they saw possible for themselves. It's rare that we would hear children expressing doubts at that young age. Something else that young children don't yet have is the maturity. The maturity to place their ideas about life into perspective. And that perspective being one that includes the concepts of spiritual principles. Many of us, I think, would agree with Jim in saying that our realization and our application of spiritual principles, our seeking out that unique relationship with spirit, is something that we came into much later in life. And by that time, our youthful dreams and proclamations may be a bit battered and bruised by some of the life experiences that we've had. But the bruises do not have to make us bitter, right? Not if we are living the simple life as we're speaking about it today. The simple life that Jim believes to begin with our awareness of God being as central to life as the air we breathe. That's what begins the simple life. When we have our awareness of spirit being as central to life as the very air that we breathe. And this awareness is based on that scriptural verse in Matthew's gospel that speaks to, seek first the kingdom of God. Seek first Spirit's presence. For example, following that premise of scripture, if we find ourselves in a place of resentment or anger or whatnot, in the simple life, we would remember that the primary issue is not the other person or other people. It's not what someone, has said or done to us. What we remember as being of primary importance is our willingness to allow Spirit to show us the way to be with all of that, all of the given experience, the people, the feelings, to be with all of that from a place of love instead of the places of resentment and anger. And so seek first the presence of spirit. That's the foundation for the simple life. Jim points out the things that happen to us, our memories, our possessions, are all significant, but nothing is as important as our relationship with God. He says, when the simple life is lived, the earthly experience flows from our oneness with God. So from there, we can look at a few actions, or they're really, expressions, that Jim has found to be helpful to him, and he offers them, to us as we begin to form or continue to form our relationship, our connection with spirit, which in turn then supports us in living this particular way. And the first of these expressions is prayer. To live a simple life is to live a life of prayer. Now, prayer can be defined in a whole host of ways. And in the readings that I did for this week's lesson, I found 3 definitions that supported the perspective of the simple life and of prayer, which Jim was presenting. First, there's Father Thomas Keating. He wrote a book called Simply Living, When Less is More. And he spoke of prayer this way. He said, contemplative prayer is the process of interior transformation, a conversation initiated by God and leading, if we consent, to a divine union. This year's fall series author, Wayne Muller, in his book, Learning to Pray, described prayer as deep, faithful listening, waiting for what is hidden to be revealed. Prayer is not words. Prayer is what happens when you listen and wait beneath the words for the outline of heaven to emerge. And our co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore, has said that prayer lifts the individual into a wonderful sense of oneness with God, who is spirit, the source of every good and perfect thing. So the perspective offered by these definitions of prayer is one where our prayer practice is one of first listening more than speaking. Secondly, waiting in lieu of trying to force something to happen in our own timetables. And third, it's allowing spirit to make itself and our oneness with it known to us. Now, aren't these some of the same things that we do that serve to foster our human relationships as well? I mean, I have found in both my personal and my professional relationships that the more time I take to listen, the more powerful those relationships become. Listening to others, learning more about them, and in that process, learning more about myself. Taking that time to wait, to just wait. Take the time to foster the relationship, knowing that there is so much more below the surface for me to see. So that's how connections are made that are lasting, and connections that continue to bless us time and time and time again. So why would we not want to give that same effort to our relationship with spirit? Why would we not want to make ourselves available to this presence that can guide us to what our human minds alone can only label as the unknown and the mysterious? When we live the simple life, when we make ourselves available to spirit as we do our next breath, we receive so much more than we can imagine, and often in ways that just transcend any of the earthly desires that we might have. And so our next act, or our next expression of the simple life, is love. The simple life is a life of love. And here's what can complicate living this simple life of love. It gets complicated when we believe that we don't possess love. We start believing that we need to get it from someone else. The simple life of love starts to get complicated when we ignore that spiritual principle, that spiritual truth that God is love. And it gets complicated when we don't allow ourselves to bring forth love from within us, to offer and express that love. I know that I've traveled a time or two through all of those complications, but here's the way back to that simple life of love. We get back on that pathway when we start to believe that our love is inherent. It is our inherent nature, and it is absolutely present in us. We get back on the path when we believe that not only is God a presence of love, but also we were created in that very same image and after that very same likeness. And it gets uncomplicated when we are willing to let that love within us come out into expression, knowing that life becomes even more simplified when we're willing to express love more than needing to get love. So remember back to our foundation: seek first God's presence in us. Well, seek first love. Seek first love and then offer it. And if you think that you don't have it to offer, or maybe it just seems too hard to give, or maybe the word itself just doesn't feel good right now, maybe hearing it in different terms, can help you. Spiritual teacher and author Gary Zukav offers a perspective when he says that the loving parts of your personality have no trouble loving. That's all they do. He said you experience the loving parts as gratitude, appreciation, caring, patience, commitment, and awe of life. So again, if that word love sometimes doesn't feel comfortable, well, then you can try looking for how all these other qualities in you are being expressed by you, and know that they are coming forth from within the very presence of love within you. Now, this isn't to say that receiving love is wrong, or that it doesn't count, or that it doesn't matter when someone else tells us that she or he loves us. But it is saying that it doesn't compare to the giving and someone else receiving that unconditional kind of love of spirit. So I'm going to ask you to think about birthdays for a minute, and children's birthdays in particular. My granddaughter Macy celebrated her 8th birthday this past Thursday. And I was looking at all the pictures that her mom had put on Facebook of her and the presents and the balloons and the decorations and the cakes and all that great stuff. And you could so easily see how happy she was, how excited she was in receiving all that love, all that attention from everybody around her. Her face was just lit up with joy. But I've also been in Macy's presence when she's come up to me holding a piece of paper behind her back. And I've watched that same face as she pulled out that paper and handed it to me without saying a word. A paper that had a very special drawing on it that she had created just for me and just for our time together. Now, the artistic creations are always wonderful, but the love expressed on her face and in her eyes as she watched me turn over the paper and looked at my expression as I received it and reacted to it, that love expressed just through the hug that came with it, just pure love that she was giving to me, that was love coming directly from God's love in her to me. And that's beyond special. And it lasts longer than the drawing on the paper likely will as more time passes by. And it's not just children that can bring us this kind of experience. I mean, when you have the opportunity to people watch, okay, and people watch in such a way that the people you're watching are those that you can't hear anything that's being said, okay, just watch them and look for the love of spirit in expression, because it'll be there. in someone clearly listening and being present to another. It'll be there in the softness of the look on their face, on the intent attention that you can see in their eyes and connecting with another person. And it'll also be there in the relaxing body language of the person who's speaking. It'll be there in the easy smiles or perhaps the wiping away of tears. You don't have to personally be involved with someone in order to witness spirit making itself known. Witnessing it can also then lead you into that loving remembrance of that very presence in yourself and put you right on, or keep you right on, that pathway of a simple life. Many years ago now, Sarah Van Brethnack, she wrote one of my favorite books. It's called Simple Abundance. And she wrote, whatever we are waiting for, peace of mind, contentment, grace, the inner awareness of simple abundance, it will surely come to us, but only when we are ready to receive it with an open and grateful heart. And that's the last expression, the last piece of living the simple life: gratitude and thanksgiving. The simple life is a life of gratitude and thanksgiving. So let's make a necessary distinction here, one between the words simple and easy. Because just because something's simple does not mean it's always easy, right? So using our simple life lens, what we see is if our gratitude and our thanksgiving, if that is dependent upon what happens to us, then our lives are going to be filled with ups and downs. It'll just continue to have its ups and downs. I mean, it's easy to be polite and courteous and say thank you when things happen that we like. Everyone can do that. But if we only respond with gratitude when life conditions are joyful, when we attach our possibility for joy to conditions, well, then the simple life is always going to remain not easy. But we can turn that around when we start experiencing joy as arising from our relationship with spirit. And right there's just so much to be grateful for, to just realize that's the key. That's the key. I have a nighttime ritual of gratitude that's helped me ingrain this part of today's focus more and more into my life and into my being. And it's been about 14 or 15 years. I couldn't track the exact date down, but it's been that long since I started using a very simple prayer at night. It was one I remember writing as a part of a class that I was taking at Unity of Houston at that time. I cannot remember what the class was. I cannot remember what the class was about, but the words that I wrote one night during that class have stayed with me ever since. And so every night after I get into bed, and just as I close my eyes, I silently offer these words of prayer to Spirit's presence in me. And I just simply say, thank you for my life, for this day, and for all that you would guide me to experience tomorrow. And when I say thank you for my life, I mean that to mean every day that's come prior to the day at hand. And when I say for this day, I don't qualify it. I don't say between the hours of 10 and 3, or just when this happened that I really liked, but not this over here that wasn't so good. And then for all that you'd guide me to experience tomorrow, again, whatever it may be. And so thank you for my life, for this day, and for all that you would guide me to experience tomorrow. You see, I'm no different than anybody else living in these times of ours today. And I can very easily, it would be so easy to make a list of goings on right now that I would not call joyful. There's so much struggle. There's so much upset that in one way or another is impacting me and so many of us in some way. And each of us is also responding to all of that in our own way. And sometimes it can feel that, our joy's just gone missing, that our joy is just lost. And so that nighttime prayer of gratitude, that helps me each day to just end that day remembering how much I have moved through in the past. It helps me to release any of those unjoyful labels that I have attached to something that occurred in that particular day. And they help me to just reaffirm my willingness to get up again in the morning and partner with Spirit for whatever that day is going to bring. So it's another way of being reminded of something that the simple life tells us, and that is that it's not our joy that's lost. It's not that our joy has gone missing. In fact, it tells us that that's not even possible, and it reminds us how to reconnect with it. And that is once again by seeking first Spirit's presence. And once again, we are brought full circle in living the simple life. There is much to learn in life, but it is best to learn how to live. And so, lesson number 1, strive to know God through prayer. Lesson number 2, let love flow from within you at all times and in all things. And lesson number 3, discover that whatever state you may find yourself, you can experience contentment and you can experience gratitude. And all 3 of these lessons involve just one thing, and that is pulling this human experience into proper perspective, one of returning to and allowing God to be God in your life. It really is that simple. God bless you.